Hey, hi. Welcome to Someone Else's Movie, the original podcast where an actor, writer, director, or nebulous industry figure gives a little love to a movie they didn't make. I'm Norm Wilner, senior film writer for Now Magazine, and this is the other thing I do. My guest this week is Lynn Coady, a writer and producer whose television credits include Orphan Black, Sensitive Skin, Michael Everyday, Diggstown, and the CBC miniseries Unspeakable. She's also a hell of an author, winning the Giller Prize in 2013 for her short story collection Hellgoing. Her latest book, Watching You Without Me, arrives in stores today, which gave us an excuse to sit down together. Lynn picked Wait Until Dark, the 1967 thriller adapted from the stage play by Frederick Knott, starring Audrey Hepburn as Susie Hendricks, a New Yorker learning to live with her recent loss of vision. Susie is also newly in possession of a great deal of heroin, although she doesn't know it, and that sets her on a collision course with three very unsavory men played by Alan Arkin, Richard Crenna, and Jack Weston. Just a warning off the top, we do get into spoiler territory, and pretty quickly, so if you've never seen the movie and we're hoping to watch it clean, well, this isn't going to help. This is someone else's movie.
I mentioned to you that I have a book coming out, and I was trying to, be a good author and make my publisher happy by thinking, well, can I come up with a movie that sort of reminds me of my book so I can, make all these parallels? And Wait Until Dark popped into my head. And I thought, it's been over 15 years since I saw that movie. And it was the kind of thing where I was just flipping through the channels back when people watched, actual TV and flipped through the channels and came across it and just was so delighted, just loved it. And I remember telling my friend about it the next day and making her really angry because I was sort of telling her the whole movie basically and all the twists and turns. Then he gets the gasoline and he throws it at her. And so she told me to shut up because she wanted to see it. But I thought, is this a good choice? Because it's not like I'm this huge Audrey Hepburn fan or anything, and I've only seen it this one time so very long ago. But then when I watched it again, I was like, oh yeah, it's actually got all these really interesting commonalities with my book that I must have been kind of subconsciously remembering. And I like the, I like the scary of it. I like the sort of thriller factor. I love Alan Arkin in that role. I don't think I've ever seen him play a villain before in any other. You would probably know all his movies.
No, this was one of his earlier roles.
Yeah,
too.
very early.
He was the weird new thing from Second City. Yeah, basically when they cast him.
Yeah, I was looking at IMDb and I was like, oh my God, Alan Arkin wasn't even really a thing when this movie came out. And I think I imagine this is a role that sort of catapulted him to other roles.
Yeah, it's kind of remarkable that he didn't get typecast.
Yeah.
As if nothing else, just as the hipster, whatever that is. Hippie.
Psycho beatnik.
Yeah. And Harry Rote Jr., which may or may not be his real name and almost certainly isn't. But we'll talk about the evolution of it because that is absolutely fascinating to me. But yeah, so you just stumbled on Alan Arkin menacing Audrey Hepburn and had to finish. Where were you in the film? Where did you come in?
I think, you know what, the other thing about remembering this movie and what grabbed me about it was that I only remembered Alan Arkin facing off against Audrey Hepburn. And I don't think that's because I just came into it when they were having their showdown. I just think it's because I was kind of so riveted by their dynamic. And the person I'm a huge fan of is Alan Arkin. So I just kind of forgot that these other two guys were part of the story.
Right.
But I forgot, what was your question again?
Well, there isn't really.
Okay.
We're just starting. But no, what made you choose Wait Until Dark? And it sounds like that's it. It just made enough of an impression on you that it was the first thing that popped out subconsciously. When you were thinking. So in as much as I don't want you to tell me anything spoilery, what is your book about? How do we come to this connection?
Well, so I guess the connection, the sort of overarching connection for me is sort of helpless lady in her home being menaced by men, or a man in the case of my book, and not knowing it at first, thinking that she's okay when actually forces are in motion against her, basically, and being gaslit, basically, in order to give over something that the man wants.
Okay. So it is the premise just took root in your mind.
Yeah, I think that's right. And the other thing that sort of struck me as interesting when I was watching it again was that, like my book, which is called, I should tell you the title. That's a good author thing to do.
Well, we'll set it up, don't we?
My book, which is called Watching You Without Me, is it all takes place in a house. And it's the character's mother's house, basically, but it's also the house she grew up in, so it's also her house. But as the story kind of unfolds, the house and the surroundings are made to kind of feel like the enemy. Like it's the zone of vulnerability when, the home is supposed to be the sanctuary.
Right.
And that's kind of what happens to Susie in the movie, too. And it's because she's blind. That's sort of part of what she's struggling with. But it's like you see her sort of struggling with all these domestic tasks like the garbage and the laundry and defrosting the icebox. And then later when things are getting scary, all those things come into play again as, part of the drama. Like, so she hides the doll in the laundry and she hides it in the garbage and then the fridge just plays this huge role at the end. And there's a sort of major appliance in my book as well that takes part in a big final showdown between the man and the woman. And I was like, wow, that's quite the coincidence now that I look at it.
So you revisited the film for this.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this was the first time you'd seen it since the first time you'd seen it?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
But I just remember it making such an impression. I thought, yeah, this should be what I talk about.
Cool. I watched it again just last night.
Mm-hmm.
I think I have a weird relationship to it because I had it spoiled for me.
Oh, no.
In 1981, maybe?
Uh-huh.
I read Stephen King's book, Danse Macabre, his nonfiction history of horror in literature and film. Mm-hmm. And he lumped Wait Until Dark in as a horror movie, which makes perfect sense because people get stabbed and there's jump scares and it's not for the faint of heart. Mm-hmm. I would love to have watched it in 1967 with an audience that, thought they were going to see that nice Audrey Hepburn.
Yeah.
and get this.
Yeah.
Because King had said, like, he talked about, he spoke of it very, very quickly, very briefly. Like, I remember it as being half a page. I really wish I'd looked it up for this. But the words he wrote really resonated. He said that it was about, Audrey Hepburn plays the world's champion blind lady, which now, like once you see the movie, that's a repeated line in the film. But it just sounded like he was being dismissive in the print. So he's making a reference that I didn't get as a kid.
Right, that's what she calls
been
herself.
Like 12 or 13. And he said that she's the world champion blind lady and her husband has to go away to slay a dragon or something. And a very bad man named Harry Rote comes and bothers her. And that's essentially it. And then he also blew the thing about the refrigerator bowl. And it's Stephen King expressing his admiration for the script, for the plot of the play, because it originated on stage, and saying, like, you and I would have, I remember this so vividly, you and I would have forgotten about this too. It's the bulb inside the refrigerator.
Yes, of course.
And I thought, okay, good going. And then I caught up to it, I don't know, another 15 years later, maybe, or 20 years later, probably in the early 2000s, whenever the DVD came out, I finally saw it and thought, oh, this is good. Like, it's stagey as hell, but it needs to be. Yeah. And I remembered the fridge bulb, but it wasn't as much of a shock. I mean, I think apparently people gasped out loud in the theater when that happens.
I can see that, totally.
But it just played.
Yeah.
For me, because I knew.
You saw it coming. You knew it was coming.
Well, I knew. Well, the first time, I think I probably forgot it. And then when she opens the refrigerator the very first time to defrost it, I just thought, oh, the light bulb.
Oh, the fridge.
And there it is.
But damn you, Stephen King.
Yeah. But, I mean, he wrote about it so convincingly that I think I was disappointed it wasn't scarier in the end. Because and I wonder if this is how it went theatrically as well in 67, if because Warner Brothers marketed, the last 8 minutes of this are going to be played in total darkness. Oh. There's a trailer on the DVD that even, it's a featurette that even suggests to smokers that they not light up out of consideration.
Oh, that's great.
In the last few minutes.
That's great.
Especially since she is running around with matches.
Yeah, totally. And you can see how that would have been really impactful in a theater. I was thinking about the play, too. Like, the play must have been fabulous with all that, the matches coming off and on and the fridge light at that key moment. But yeah, in a movie theater as well, it would have just been so riveting.
Yeah.
I can imagine the audience gasping at that moment.
They even dimmed the exit lights, apparently.
Did they?
To the legal limit, to the legal minimum.
That's great. And it's such a great moment, too, because, like, the fridge is her undoing But then it's also her salvation. Like
Yeah.
she uses it to defend herself at the end of the story.
Yeah, it's. I really wish I'd seen it on stage. Maybe not in. I found out I did a little research into the history of it. I knew that the original had been staged with Lee Remick and Robert Duvall. As Rote. I thought at first that Robert Duvall would have made more sense as the cop.
Yeah.
Like as the detective, not the sergeant. The role played by Richard Crenna in the film. But Duvall would have also been like a baby.
Yeah,
so you couldn't
how
get
old
away
would
with
he
it.
have been?
This was after To Kill a Mockingbird, but only a few years. So, early 30s,
I can't
maybe,
even
at the
picture
most.
Robert Duvall at that age.
Like this would have been 5 years before The Godfather.
Wow.
So he was young and smooth then.
Yeah.
But him as Harry Rote, Master of Disguise, would have been fascinating. But the thing that I kept thinking about with the stage version, watching the film version, which is directed by a James Bond guy. Terrence Young made 3 of the first 4 Bond films.
Yes, that's
Dr.
right.
No,
I was
From
reading
Rush with
that.
Love and Thunderball. And then I almost want to say, took the wrong approach to this.
You think?
I just kept thinking, what would this have been like to watch from a static position on at a stage and see everything? Because the way it cuts, the close focus on Hepburn really works towards the end.
Yeah.
But just to watch those early scenes play out where all 3 men are standing stock still and she's going about her day and watching an actress in real time live physically interacting with all, and not physically interacting with all of those things and those people and those buttons that she does. I thought, I really want to see this performed on stage. I don't know if it would be as intense.
Right.
Because we'd have distance, and Hepburn's facial features and her tics and her non-expressiveness are so important to the performance in the movie.
Yeah, all those close-ups.
But, yeah, I kind of wish I'd seen it without being told where to look.
Right.
If that makes any sense.
Right. But don't you think the director would just why make a movie out of it?
You want to.
If we do it that way.
And you want to showcase all the weird stuff that Arkin is doing with the disguises, and you want to showcase Crenna and Jack Weston. There's not a thing I can say against any of their choices. They're all really interesting.
Yeah.
And Hepburn's great. And I don't know, I kept thinking, I really wish I was seeing this live. I'd love to see how you block it and how you stage it without being, hinted at.
Yeah, maybe that's one of the problems. Like, you are really aware of the play when you're watching it, and you can't help but think, oh, this must have been a great play. This must have been great on stage. I would love to have seen this on stage.
Yeah. And I don't know how you can open it up, right? They do their best. They go outside the apartment, and they have the opening scene in Montreal, and which is
hilarious.
Adorable.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh, my God. The Air
plane has an
Canada.
Expo 67 decal on it. I assume there was some kind of a tax break or
who knows?
Production
But it was sort of startling to see good old Air Canada there. And then the security is like giving her bag to the guy and him going zip.
Person at the check-in desk.
Yeah, at the check-in desk.
Not even a little
there.
room.
As she holds the doll full of heroin.
Yeah.
It's like, those were the days.
Exactly. For the good old days. Yeah. And do they even actually say the word heroin? Because there's this whole thing with Crenna and Arkin saying, what's in the doll? You don't want to know. Well, now we know. They don't actually ever say it.
Yeah, just Lisa says it at the beginning.
Oh, that's right.
She says something like, "Oh, the problem with smuggling heroin is ...
That's right. They tell us. Mm-hmm. And then we have those sort of the beats of the plot are so quickly established. Not necessarily the backstory of Hepburn losing her sight. That takes a while.
Yeah.
She mentions that she's recently blind to all the new people who meet her.
Yeah. Oh, by the way.
Yeah. And who are all, again, this is one of the reasons I wish I'd seen it on stage. The amazing conceit of this thing, it's like a reverse Hitchcock. His argument was always the bomb isn't scary if it just explodes, but if I show it to you under the table with a timer, you're on the edge of your seat. This is sort of like that. And it is based on a play by the same guy who wrote Dial M for Murder.
Oh.
So maybe that put it in my head as well.
Right.
But I kept thinking, we're watching people openly lie to someone because we know the plot. We've seen it all. We've accompanied the wrong characters into the story.
Yeah.
Like, they've told us what they're doing, and we watched the deal go down, and have all these things are in place. There's a corpse. There's this. There's that. And so then everything we're watching is people sort of smiling at each other while they lie to her in serious voices, and it's just fascinating.
And wipe up their fingerprints.
Yeah, all the bits of business.
Yeah.
And we have that hint where she's clearly smarter than they think she is. She picks up that they were sweeping something or wiping something, but dusting, I think she says.
That's the suspense of it, isn't it? It's just
Yeah.
like the suspense is not, the corpse falls out of the closet and it's not, are these nice men actually bad men? Because we know they are. It's like, is she going to put it together? And when is she going to put it together? And when she puts it together, what is she actually going to do? What's going to happen?
And it's a fascinating visual conceit that all the clues, all the evidence, the only thing that's missing is the doll, but we see everything before she does. Literally, before she gets to it, before she figures it out.
Yeah.
And of course the kid has the doll because she's the most annoying child in the world.
Yes, she is, from the get-go.
Right. But again, it's only a red herring if you care. Like it's not, the doll's not important. It's a MacGuffin. We know she can't find it. That's the only thing that matters.
Yeah, that's what matters. She doesn't know where it is. Good thing she does.
Yeah. And then it becomes a question of like, does she turn the tables? Is that ever something that actually happens, or does she just survive? That's like the fascinating aspects of it. When you're watching someone who by rights should be helpless, is presumed to be helpless, and just turns out to be tougher than everybody else in the room.
And actually uses the thing that makes her helpless as a kind of superpower.
Yeah.
In the end, like when she hears the shoes squeaking, so she knows Rote Jr. is actually Rote Sr. and vice versa. And then, of course, the just the fact that, when she bashes all the lights and she's like, it's like, I was remembering Arya Stark in Game of Thrones, and I was like, these guys did it first. That's where Game of Thrones got the idea. It's the first instance of somebody, battling in the dark because she can function in the dark, whereas her enemies can't.
I think that's absolutely it. Stark, dark. I wonder if it was always there. Probably not.
Wait until Stark.
Yes, exactly. I would watch that movie. Also, she's short, so she'd have the height advantage. You just go for people's kneecaps.
That's right.
Hiding under the kitchen island.
Yep, tripping
like
them.
That. Yeah.
That whole thing.
I could totally get behind that. And you have Hepburn, who is somehow still a fashion plate, even though she's supposed to not be capable of worrying about things like that. There's a moment where she sort of sorts her socks or something when she's putting the laundry together, and she's clearly doing it by finger feel, by texture, which is just such a great little telling detail.
Yeah.
That maybe you don't bother with that if you're on stage, but she clearly brought it to it. She thought
quite
it
a
through.
minute detail, yeah.
Yeah. And it's that great contrast of her not looking at people and looking past people. The producer, Mel Ferrer, is interviewed on the Warner disc, and he says that they offered her contact lenses or dark glasses or something, and she said, "No, I don't want any of the business. I want to play it."
Oh wow!
Again, I don't usually rely on DVD supplements this much, but I found them fascinating.
Did you just have the DVD?
Yeah, I have it.
Wow!
It's an old snapper case too. It's one of those films that really could use a remastering.
Yeah,
it does not look great.
No, I don't think so.
There's print damage. They clearly used a 35 millimeter source print instead of an interpositive or negative, and it looked like it was done from an old source. But in the supplements, there's a featurette on Arkin, and he talks about what Harry Rote is. I think he's the only surviving member of the cast by that point, except maybe the girl who plays Gloria.
Right.
And he said that my decision was this guy is on every drug, and they're interacting weirdly, and he's just careening from one thing to another. So what you see is him trying really hard to keep it together, and it's not working.
Oh, interesting.
Right? Because it doesn't read that way at all. It's just like he's got this strange vibe that he's rolling through. But the idea that he's fighting conflicting impulses or perceptions is really interesting to me. That's why he has the dark glasses on.
To me, he just read sociopath. I just found him stone cold, and with his weird beatnik
kind of thing,
way of speaking. But and I sort of, the sunglasses played into that for me. It's just like there's nothing there. You can't see into this guy's soul because he doesn't have one, kind of thing. But you can see how him being on every drug in the world and fighting, his impulses constantly would kind of translate into that affect, actually.
Yeah.
Rather than feeling anything, you sort of project like you're feeling nothing.
Yeah, and I just assumed that the beatnik thing is just another skin. Like he's just wearing that to fool whoever he's with right now.
Right.
That's this week's disguise.
Right. It's just another Rote.
Yeah, and we never find out if that's his real name. I mean, it certainly isn't.
Yeah.
Right. Mrs. Rote is really Mrs. Rote, apparently. So maybe she's identified as Mrs. Rote.
Oh, really?
Wait, do we actually know that?
I don't think so.
Yeah, no, all the information comes from
the bad guys.
From the bad guys. There is no which is something else that's really interesting. You know, like even Psycho has the psychiatrist at the end to tell you what happened. You know, like that 8-minute monologue.
Right. We don't get that.
Which we don't care about when it's happening, but afterwards it does help you put it togetger. And this is just like, nope, that's it. It's over.
Yeah. Don't ask any questions because there's a lot of plot holes going on.
Yeah, I don't know how much of the story even matters. He introduces himself as Harry Road Jr. to everybody, but yeah, there's no reason to believe it's true.
Yeah.
And he is so bizarrely compelling that I now regret. Like I met him, I interviewed him when Argo came through TIFF, and I regret not getting the chance. We had your standard film festival press opportunity, which is I think you have 8 minutes with a living legend.
Right.
Please only ask questions about the movie you just saw. And I'm like, I really want to talk about literally everything. And he was this incredibly friendly, open, he won't, process guy. He wants to talk about interaction. He does it on the DVD as well. Just, well, I want people who are open with me, and I want to be able to relax and be in the moment and find the truth. And it's like, yeah, you do.
That's
even in this movie.
Yeah.
He's doing that. Like he's never telling the truth for a second, except when he says, oh, I promised not to hurt you. I must have been crossing my fingers.
Right.
And you can feel the pleasure he takes in that.
Yeah.
And that's creepy.
Yeah, that's super creepy. That's like when everything kind of falls away.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, I'm a bad guy. I'm basically the worst.
Yeah. It's Chigger from No Country for Old Men. You meet him, you're probably dead.
Oh, yeah.
Even just wander past him and you're probably not going to see anybody else ever again.
Yeah, exactly.
And that sense of like that pervasive menace that he carries with him, part of it is the switchblade, of course, and part of it is the affect or the affectless affect.
Yeah.
But then you gradually watch like what should have been ridiculous, that improvised fight scene where between Crenna Weston and Arkin, where they turn on him and
Right.
like Crenna's swinging a camera
And one of them has
Weston
a
has the
chair.
tripod and Crenna has the chair and swinging the camera case, and it's clearly like it must have been great on stage because it's whatever's in reach.
Yep.
And it's so fun to watch actors figure out, oh, this is a weapon in 2 seconds.
But that was another thing that just made me think way too much of the play. It's like,
Yeah.
on stage, this might be good, but on film, I don't know. It's
I know.
a bit silly.
Well, it looks like play acting. Right? Like it can't help but look silly when you're seeing it from 5 different angles and there's there's time to appreciate. I think that's the other problem too. Most of the action scenes in the film would happen so quickly on stage. Like you'd have a split second to realize what was going on if you're watching it all come together.
Yeah.
And here we have just enough. There's a little extra blocking and a little extra cutting. And
Yeah.
it just gives you too much time to see the artifice.
Yeah, and Crenna swinging that thing it felt like it took forever. Like,
Yeah.
just like round and round and round.
Yeah, and it even takes him a minute to stop doing it, which is kind of, I get it. You're registering that there's no threat anymore, but
Yeah.
we're still trying to figure out what it is.
What that thing was
Yeah.
that he was swinging? What was it? Do
it's
you
a
know?
camera in a case.
Oh, it was a camera in a case.
But yeah, it's like, is that a bolo? Where did he get a bolo? I mean, that's pretty cool if you have one, but
Right.
It's 1967 New York. You've got to be ready for anything.
So true.
But and that general urban decay thing, the sense that this nice lady's house is being infected by dirty cops and beatniks and
Yeah, dirty cops and beatniks. It's
Yeah,
true. And
the
then
scum of the earth.
And then Crenna, who is like, he's almost the worst because he's sort of the stand-up, all-American, broad-shouldered kind of guy.
He's a charmer.
Who's actually a scumbag, but he's in a way, he's sort of positioned as a love interest for Susie because they go together. They're just like leading man, leading lady.
Yeah. No, it's great. And his character Sel is smart. Like he comes in, that again, something that would have really, really landed on stage. And it works it kind of works in the movie. I was bugged by it more the second viewing, where he's pretending to be. They use their real names, which is bizarre too. Like he's Mike, but he's a friend of Sam's. He claims to be a friend of Sam's, to the point where he brings a parcel which she can't see. So that's clearly something he's done before. Like that's a trick he uses as part of his repertoire. But there's a moment where he says, "Oh, there's me in that picture," and that's great writing for her benefit, because of course a blind character couldn't say no. And it instantly establishes an intimacy and a knowledge and a history. And we don't get to see what he's looking at in the movie, but on stage he would have clearly looked at something that clearly wasn't him.
Yeah.
And so the lack of an eye line, even then, just made me think, oh yeah, that could have been handled better.
Right.
I mean, you show us something that's complete. Look at a picture of Hepburn. There are a bunch of those in the house.
Sure.
But yeah.
Yeah, just something.
it's not wrong exactly, but you can just see a better way of doing it.
A moment like that for me actually was, I was thinking of this when we were sort of talking about the director, was when, you remember when Rote cuts the phone cord?
Oh, yeah.
And
uses her cane to pick it up. And
yeah. And Susie is sort of, after everybody leaves and she knows what's going on, she's stumbling around and she's like, oh, the phone's dead. And then she follows the cord and follows it and follows it. And then she pulls it down and like the frayed end of it kind of shows
pops into frame,
before she actually gets hold of it and knows what's going on. So it just felt like it would have helped me to empathize more with Susie if like we saw the frayed end as she grabbed it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Rather than seeing it first and then.
Yeah, and especially since in the stage version there's no way that bit of business would have registered as anything other than, oh, he's doing something weird in the background, the same way it does here. Mm-hmm. But it would pull focus while it's happening, and so then you get the payoff.
Yeah.
And instead it's just that's what he was doing.
That's what he was doing
with the cane, which isn't as much of a landing, I don't think. Mm-hmm. And yet I still like this movie.
Oh, me too.
That's what I keep coming back to, my general bewilderment at sitting through it and going, this could be better, but it still works. And I had completely forgotten about the pacing of that last jump shock, to the point where, like, I watched it with Kate. We watched it together, and both of us jumped.
Yeah, me too. I did too, and I gasped.
And you knew it was coming. Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I did.
But it's just this great, weird, and I think it's because it's really Arkin. Like, it's not a stuntman.
Yeah,
it's an actor throwing himself forward
across the room.
Yeah, basically. And I watched it again just to see the pacing of it, and it's like, I'm pretty sure he's jumping off a trampoline or some kind of springboard to get that
He got all that air.
He gets air.
It's true.
But it's that thing that it's the arm in Carrie, it's Jason out of the water in Friday the 13th. Mm-hmm. It's that thing where for a moment, this not only is this not over, I think we're dealing with something superhuman. This is terrifying.
Yeah, that feeling like it's coming back. We thought it was defeated, but it's coming back. Before that became a trope, really. Yeah. Like, it wasn't a trope back then.
I was looking for earliest instances, and there's maybe a couple of horror movies with a final sting, but this is probably definitely the first time it was used in a studio film, unless there's some huge thing I'm missing.
Yeah.
And it's freaking creepy. It's really scary.
And then him like struggling forward with the knife, like digging the knife into the floor as he laboriously works his way over to her. Yeah. It's very, very grim.
I mean, there's no way you're going to kill Audrey Hepburn.
No.
But there's a moment where it feels like it could happen.
Yeah.
Because the rules are broken now.
Yeah.
Like, he's just not stopping. And it's Halloween and it's everything else, but that hadn't happened yet, as you say.
And all she has is that refrigerator door.
Yeah. Those fridge doors were heavy, though.
They were, yeah. Like, you feel like that's a pretty good shield if you've got to pick something in a household.
And we've already had, even before he springs at her, there's that moment where she trips over Krenna's body, and we're reminded that, there's a dead guy. That actor. And again, I thought of the stage, like, that actor had to be there for the entire last reel.
Right.
The last 20 minutes of that play.
Oh, that's right.
And it's just
lying there.
So much more complicated. I would, again, so who was, somebody surprised me that, Lee Remick played Susie in the original stage production with Duvall as Harry Rote. And the actor who played, he says, looking it up on his phone, so I have the page open, the actor who played Mike Tallman was Mitchell Ryan, who is this big square-jawed, he's the bad guy in the first Lethal Weapon.
Oh.
Like, he's this kind of Stacy Keach guy.
Okay.
Basically. For those of you listening who don't know who Stacy Keach is either, I can't help you. But just this big, solid,
burly
Brian Dennehy type. Again, another reference nobody's going to get at this point. I'm old. But
Google it.
Yeah, please Google it. And then go watch Lethal Weapon. Well, the Mel Gibson of it makes it weird, but still. But it is, like, as a stage play, that's fascinating. And then I found out there was a restaging with Marissa Tomei.
Oh.
Okay.
Fun.
Hold your approval.
Oh.
Because it was her and Quentin Tarantino.
Oh, and he was Rote?
He was Rote, which just does not sound like a good idea at all.
Oh, dude, I would watch that. I would totally watch that. I kind of love Quentin Tarantino when he acts.
Yeah.
He's always himself.
It was yes, he would be. Yeah. It was 1998. It ran for 97 performances. And Stephen Lang, who's best known, I guess, for Avatar, but who I always think of from Last Exit to Brooklyn and The Hard Way.
Oh.
again, a kind of a Mitchell Ryan type as Mike.
Uh-huh.
Tarantino, I see him trying to do his own thing, as Harry wrote, and
and it being bad.
I can't imagine it would have worked.
Yeah.
He's just, would he have done a beatnik thing? I mean, was it in period? I don't even know. It would have had to be.
Would it?
I guess. I mean, if you have a cell phone, the whole movie stops working.
No cell phones.
Although I guess if you're newly blind, you might not be able to. Well, no, in 98, that would have all been hard number, not iPhones.
But if somebody steals your cell phone, that's what happens in my book.
Okay.
Yep. She's got no landline. Somebody takes her cell phone. And then you're basically like back in 1967.
Yeah.
There's it's almost like being blind in 1967 because we can't function without our cell phones anymore.
That's certainly true.
We just curl up into balls.
Yeah, I would not do well.
No.
It would probably in the end be better for me to not have a cell phone all the time because I definitely get more work done.
Yeah.
I would fight with people less I don't fight with people on Twitter. I just ignore them now. But, it's...
Definitely fewer distractions.
Yeah. Even this morning, I've been up since 5 a.m. I was writing some capsules so we could get them into our TIFF wrap, which will have long since come out by the time this drops. But I'm, knowing that I have a deadline of 8 a.m. and why am I still looking at the news? I'm very easily distracted.
Oh, yeah, I know. Me too.
How do you write whole books?
I don't know how I write whole books. I mean, I use the internet as like a little treat. So, and when I'm writing, I really enjoy it. It's not that I don't want to be distracted from it. So I'll write for 3 hours, then I'll check Twitter. It's a little treat just to see what's going on, and then maybe write a little bit more. And that's basically it. I just don't push myself so hard that I'm not having fun anymore. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So if I write for 3 to 4 hours a day, more or less every day, basically at the end of a couple of years, you have a book.
Wow. You can always tell when I've hit a deadline because my Twitter presence will skyrocket.
Oh, yeah, you're just on Twitter constantly.
Yeah, I filed something and then it's like, well, I guess I have to comment on literally everything that I've missed in the 5 hours that I've been working.
And you must be able to justify it to yourself, too, because it's like, I'm a media guy. I'm supposed to be interacting with my readers.
Sure, it's all brand.
Yeah, this is work. It's all work.
It's not. It's not. It's anti-work. It really is.
Yeah.
I had this. I have this thing now where if you everybody does. It's not just me. If you are at a film festival, you're expected to deliver your thoughts on a film the second it's over. Right. You got to be first.
Yeah.
In the hopes that you get retweeted or you get picked up, and it somehow becomes part of the influence that you extend or that you exert, and it's all bullshit. It's all garbage.
Yeah.
Unless I have. When I saw The Tree of Life and was basically just trying not to cry for the next half hour, and I was on stage doing an unexpected Q&A with Jessica Chastain. That's I didn't have time to tweet my impressions, but also I would have just said, this is the best thing I've seen all year. Unless it's something like that, what are we adding really to the discourse? The whole point of it used to be that the whole point of criticism was that you spent several hundred words explaining something, and we don't do that anymore.
No. So can you be a refusenik? Could you just not tweet your feelings after a movie?
It's expected. It's required. That's the other problem, too. It's that is actually part of the work.
Part of the job, yeah.
Only then, I think. And then there's the whole issue of embargoes and doing something in order to respect you see it on Twitter every time it happens. When the embargo is up, all of these opinions just rain down on it.
Yeah.
And I don't know that helps either.
Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
I've always wanted to ask this of a movie critic. Do you ever feel like because you're just constantly absorbing stories, films, and having to produce an opinion on them, that do you ever feel like your critical faculty's breaking down? Do you feel like maybe I don't know what's good, or what's bad anymore?
I think I always know what works on me.
Yeah.
Right. So I think that's where it goes. I don't know. I've been on the opposite side of critical divides enough times to know that I no longer care if other people think I'm right. That's my only obligation has to be to my response.
Yeah.
That said, I know there's no point in going to see another Transformers movie.
Yeah.
Those are not for me, and I accept that. I think I'm still capable of enjoying stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, I know I am. I really
That's
like.
good.
Yeah, I really liked Ready or Not last week.
Oh, good. I'm looking forward to seeing that.
It's
actually.
a lot of fun.
Nice.
And it's from filmmakers who've been kind of wobbly for me before. The Radio Silence team. They've done. They did short pieces of the VHS and South Band anthologies, and in neither of those films did I think they'd made the strongest ones. But this one hits on something really pleasurable about watching entitled, inept people try to be scary.
Right.
And Samara Weaving is just such a blast as a sort of a hunted person who becomes the Avenger. It happened in Mayhem as well, this little movie. It's on Shudder now, I think.
Yeah.
She made with, for Joe Lynch, with Stephen Yeun from The Walking Dead. And the two of them are basically thrown together inside a building that's flooded by the rage virus, and everybody's just gone completely insane. Not the rage virus, no. The thing about Mayhem is that it's a self-aware zombie movie where people are just kind of energized. Whatever the virus is, it allows them to act on their impulses.
Oh.
So it's just a bunch of people running around, punching each other and screwing each other, and throwing the copier out the window.
Oh, wow.
And the two of them they kind of forced into an alliance because both of them are in equal jeopardy from this situation. And she just turns out to have a real talent for smashing people's faces. And
That
so,
sounds fun.
Yeah, and so now she's found another way to do that in this.
Right.
But also you get Christian Brune and Melanie Scrofano from Orphan Black and Women Herb as a married couple of morons who are just like handed crossbows and expected to kill people. And it's just a blast.
And Henry Czerny?
Henry Czerny, Mark O'Brien.
Yeah.
Yeah, they shot it up in North Bay.
Oh, that's where it was shot.
Yeah, and it looks like, it could be Connecticut. Doesn't really matter. They shot it in the summer, I guess. And yeah, it's really silly. It's really fun. And it does have a sort of, no, it doesn't. I was about to say, it kind of brings back to Wait Until Dark. It doesn't really. This is just what I do. But it's, it's mostly set in one place. It's, and it's very cinematic. It is a textbook example of how to shoot a mansion in widescreen and envelop. I mean, there's a hidden passage here, and there's a dumbwaiter there, and we always know where everybody is. And there's this great shot of Christian looking up something on his phone while somebody plummets from the floor above him. And it's in the trailer, actually. It's just a static shot. It's just this motion in the back, and he remains oblivious with his face lit by the cell phone.
Right.
That's lovely. That's what I want. And I think the fact that I can respond to that at the end of a really long summer, that makes me believe I can still make it through the festival.
I think I had that question in my head because I've read Roger Ebert over the years, and I find some of his sort of opinions so egregious. Like he just would lose his shit about completely innocuous movies that were perfectly fine, or else he'd just praise to the hilt something that was completely ridiculous.
This is towards the last 10 years, right?
Yeah. And then I read a review of Wait Until Dark.
He hated it.
He didn't like it.
The idiot plot. I remember that.
The idiot plot, that's right. And he kept going on and on about how she should have locked the door. Why didn't she just lock the door? And I'm pretty sure that somebody messes with the lock at a certain point, so the door doesn't lock, but she thinks it's locking.
Yeah, and she does lock it once, clearly, but it doesn't help, right? Because it's the same. Of course, it's the same thing.
Yeah.
I think that his bigger problem is that it's unlocked at the beginning, which of course it is, because Rode unlocked it. We're led to understand that.
Yeah.
To let the other guys in.
Yes. Yeah, that's right. So
I don't know.
What's he on about?
I suspect that. I know that towards the end of his life, he had so many health issues. Someone else put this far more eloquent than I did, but it was very clear that he was just happy to be going to the movies. Like he was happy to be alive and going to the movies, and so everything was a little bit sweeter, a little bit nicer. And you can feel it in some of his stuff where he's not, you don't feel him straining to like a movie. I think he genuinely did. But
he always just found something to like in whatever he was seeing.
Towards the last 5 or 6 years was going way over the top, I think. But his political writing got sharper.
Yeah,
because
that's
he became
weird,
more
isn't it?
engaged.
Yeah. So I guess that's because he was an aficionado. Like he as I'm sure you are, of the movies. He just started out reviewing movies because he loved movies, and maybe he eventually just came back to that sort of fundamental place.
I wonder. And I didn't know him. I knew him a little. I didn't know him really well. But he was always, once he got sober was when I knew him. So apparently before that, he was much more judgmental, much more temperamental, angrier. He was definitely angrier.
Interesting.
And I only ever knew him after that. And so he seemed like a really, he seemed like he was trying to be a good person. Like it was important to him. Not that he wasn't, but that he feared he might slide.
Yeah.
And so maybe that's part of it too, after the health stuff started.
Do you think it's also partly having done it for so long and knowing so many movie people and getting an awareness of how, like I found this as a book reviewer. I had to stop reviewing books because novelists work so hard. Like they work so hard, and I don't want to be shitting on something they worked on for 3 years just because, it's not my thing.
The disease of empathy. The worst thing that can happen to a reviewer.
Cut that out. And I wonder if that was the case for him after so many years of working in that field.
Maybe. I mean, I wonder too, because I don't think I'm any less demanding of movies as I see them now. Mm-hmm. But I also know that I'm less likely to see the stuff that's going to really piss me off.
Yeah.
And maybe that's it. You just become self-selecting
you know
as a
what
form
to
of
avoid.
survival.
Yeah.
And I've been it now since 2008, and we have a team. Before, when it was just me freelancing, I saw everything because that's the best way to get the most money, write the most reviews. And I was pretty much the only person writing for Metro for 3 or 4 years. I was the film department.
Yeah.
And so you saw everything. And then once you get the position of being supported, suddenly you don't have to see 12 movies. You can pick which 6.
And you don't resent them as much, I imagine. When you do see something you don't like.
No, I'm still mad when my time gets wasted. I remember being so pissed off at, The Aftermath. Which stars it's a Fox Searchlight production. This actually works out nicely because having just praised Ready or Not, I can knock another one of their pictures just for balance. Yeah. It stars Keira Knightley and Alexander Skarsgård and Jason Clarke, and it's a post-war denazification drama, and it was so milquetoast about everything. This is a film about Nazi dead-enders in 1945. And it doesn't have the strength to make the architect, the German architect for whom Knightley falls when she's placed, her husband takes over his house, and so Jason Clarke and Keira Knightley are living in this German architect's house, and he and his daughter are up in the attic. That's where they can stay, and it's a nice arrangement for everyone. But of course, Keira Knightley and Alexander Skarsgård are going to bone because they're the prettiest people in the movie, and it's just everything about it is an inevitability. And then the movie doesn't even have the guts to make him a former Nazi. Like, there's this whole thing about how he never joined the party and he never did anything. And he was a conscientious objector, which is fine. I'm sure that's probably true of a lot of German people who survived the war. But in this case, the whole point of this is that it's about former enemies finding common ground. And so why not just have him be a member of the party? Yeah. Most Germans were.
That's complicated and interesting.
Yeah, and they don't want that. So I remember there's a little speech about that very early on. Oh, Father, we all know. And it just, that's what kind of movie this is. It's just, this is going to be the least interesting, most vanilla version of the story that I've already seen a dozen times. And why am I here? Like that's the thing I'm feeling more often now. These movies don't need me.
Right.
But I won't walk out because I'm an idiot. I stayed for the whole thing.
Well, you must feel like you have to.
I do, yeah. I mean, I think
that
the job. The least I can do is stay still. Like sit for the whole thing. Even if I know, and most of us do know, 10 minutes in, critics and non-critics, if we're not going to like this thing.
Yeah. Same with books.
Yeah.
Again.
But we power through out of a sense of obligation or honor. I really, I envy the people who can just get up and leave sometimes.
I know. It's a superpower.
Yeah, it really is. But then you come back to stuff that kind of works and pulls you in. Like Wait Until Dark is a movie I was happy to watch all the way through. Again, even though it is slow and a little clunky and very stagey, I still, in the middle of all this TIFF stuff, I could still take pleasure in a pulp film from 50 years ago.
Well, it's so much fun to just watch the choreography of it, like the dance of the men coming in and the back and forth of the blinds, how they're signaling with the blinds and cleaning up their fingerprints as they go and sort of exchanging looks as they try to con Susie.
All while maintaining serious voices. That was the thing that I really loved watching close up. I think if you need to see this as a film, that's why. To watch the lying. Like just how blithely everyone is, well, and then just glancing at each other while intoning these very serious police words.
Yeah.
And just sort of smirking or twitching.
Mm-hmm.
All the stuff you're never supposed to do as an actor, right? Like all the stuff they're bad actors.
Right.
Because they're not, like the characters are terrible actors.
Yeah.
Because they're not taking her seriously because she can't see them.
Yeah.
And that
right.
must have been immensely pleasurable on stage.
Yeah.
Right.
That just, yeah, sorry.
No, but it works in the movie too. Mm-hmm. It's the one thing that is, I think, the advantage of cinema is that you can get right up close, and you get those wonderful frames of Hepburn lighting a match into the darkness, into camera, where we are pretty sure there's nothing behind her, but there might be, and like you tense up even though you know that nothing's going to happen the second time through. It's there's something elemental and primal about those scenes that, I mean, obviously it's the reason the film works. Mm-hmm. No one would remember it if it didn't have that 8 minutes.
What did you think, just sort of speaking of staginess, what did you think of Harry Rote's disguises?
Oh, they're ridiculous. I think they would have worked a lot better on stage, right, where you can't see them. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's another thing. Like, Quentin Tarantino can't not look like Quentin Tarantino.
Yeah.
How do you even disguise that jaw?
Yeah.
I guess beards or something. But it would be so obvious. And apparently on stage it wasn't when Duvall came back in with the disguises.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Or not
People didn't
immediately.
realize he was disguised?
I maybe not. I mean, people talked about it at the time anyway. Alan Arkin is clearly having fun.
Yes.
Like
he's doing voices.
Yeah. Rote is enjoying himself.
Yeah.
And we are too. Mm-hmm. So it's fine. And also it's completely unnecessary because she can't see him.
She's blind.
Yeah.
I know. And I tried to give them the benefit of the doubt because I was like, okay, Gloria actually sees Rote Sr.
Yeah.
I can't remember if she sees Rote Jr., but she
I don't know that she ever does. No, I don't think they're in the room at the same time.
So it's like, okay, maybe they're worried that he might run into, somebody other than Susie and have to be this character.
Yeah.
But
then, it is an apartment building in New York. It could happen.
Yes.
Although it's a depopulated New York pretty much as we see it. We don't get any sense that, other than those kids on the stoop early on, there's no sense that anybody else is out there.
No, and like you can send Gloria down to the Port Authority and she's like 12 and it's night. And it's like, true. Apparently it's safe for her to do that.
The whole urban blight thing doesn't apply to small. Well, honor, right? Like, no criminal is going to pick on a baby.
Yeah, that's right.
You're fine. You can go.
New York was good that way.
Yeah, even Jack Weston lets her go by.
Yeah, it's true.
That weird speech about the Girl Scout cookies, which I assume happened in voiceover. You could hear it because the whole point of it is that she rattles the stick against the fence so Susie knows she's leaving.
Oh, right.
But yeah, the disguises. I think maybe it's just because he loves it. Maybe it's a distraction.
Yeah.
Maybe whatever he's on is kicked into the point. It's like, yeah, you know what? A mustache would be a great idea.
And some wigs and some, like, he just was like full hair and makeup.
Yeah. And to the point, too, that he gets like, and Alan Arkin, and Alan Arkin, and Alan Arkin in the credits. You see three different faces. Just in case the audience didn't know.
Yeah. It's like the audience is going to be, wait a minute. Alan Arkin played all those characters?
That's Inspector Clouseau.
That was hilarious.
Yeah. It's a weird, outdated, somehow still good movie. Mm-hmm. Like, it has dated horribly on almost every level, but it doesn't matter, which I think is kind of great.
Mm-hmm. And it's, I mean, in a way for me, the datedness of it is part of the pleasure. Like, there's Audrey Hepburn's terrible beige ensemble that she's wearing at the beginning, and it like reminded me so much of stuff my parents dressed me in the 70s, and Lisa's insanely big hair. Like, there was just all these wonderful 60s touches that I really enjoyed.
Yeah, the thing I kept thinking of is like, Clute is right around the corner.
Oh yeah,
and it's going to obliterate this sort of movie,
right?
Because that's a character study detective movie. It doesn't have a gimmick. It's just, it's almost experimental in some of the ways it handles the bad guy, and you just see this film is like the last. It's not the last gasp exactly, but it is the last wave of that sort of studio filmmaking.
That's a really good point. Yeah, because like this whole 70s realism is right around the corner, isn't it? Huh.
Yeah, they shot in New York, so it's technically part of it, but it really isn't. That's a soundstage. There's there's no fooling anybody what sort of film this is. And even Hepburn's acting style is about to go out of vogue.
And she's got that patrician mid-Atlantic accent that people did.
Yeah, which is like, it is the Audrey Hepburn accent, right? Like, she couldn't fake it. There's no reason to do anything else. She's great at what she does, but it's about to be over.
Yeah, and that feels really dated, like even in that context, in that movie.
Well, I wonder if it's the collision of her and Arkin, because he is so modern.
Yeah.
Like, he is basically
He's
a
a
method
mod.
actor, even though, though, of course, literally. But he's basically a method actor, even though he's not. I don't think he would call himself that, but that's certainly how his process works. Like, he's in the moment and doing whatever it takes.
Yeah.
And he speaks very highly of all the actors, and she said she was willing to do whatever, like in a moment, in a scene, that she was a great scene partner. And I kind of wish there were dailies, because I'd love to see how they just negotiated that stuff. There must have been moments where one or the other of them didn't hit the right tone, and they're finding this weird new ground together, and then it all goes away in the end because it's just pure physical, like, action.
Maybe that's part of why I only remember them. Like, there was that great dynamic going on between the two of them, and they were so opposed in some ways, but maybe that's what made their scenes together just crackle the way they did.
Yeah, no, the chemistry's amazing. I mean, it's anti-chemistry, but still, like, he's toying with her, and then in the end, she gets to toy with him.
Yeah.
And it's so satisfying.
Fights back. Yeah, it's really good.
So, without talking about the ending of your book, I mean, we've already pretty much discussed the influences and the back and forth, but the idea of inspiration being subconscious and sort of bubbling along. Did you realize how much you were drawing on it subconsciously while you were writing this, or did it
Not
come
at
up after?
all.
Really?
No, I wasn't. I didn't, like, literally Wait Until Dark did not occur to me until I was talking to you and thinking about movies.
Oh, wow.
But thinking about it now was just like, I mean, just that appliance thing that I was telling you about, that the two stories had in common. But I think, like, maybe there's, I don't know, like, I was wondering if there was any way for that movie to have had some kind of latent feminist influence, because it just feels like it's telling a story of, as I was saying, female helplessness. There's this sense that, and this is the same with my book too, the sort of temptation women have to rely on the kindness of strangers, basically, and that it's like this seductive temptation to kind of let a man come into your home and look after things if there's a crisis. And this is what happens to Susie, right? There's a crisis. She doesn't know it's manufactured, but, this nice man, Mike, who's a friend of her husband, is here to make everything better.
Right. And he's vouched for in the world of the film because he claims to know her husband. He
claims to know her husband, yeah. And it's a similar thing in my book. And it just feels like the message of the movie is, don't do that, ladies. You have to be self-sufficient, because that's what sort of Susie's kind of philosophical arc is. It's like she's mad that she has to be the championship blind lady, that Sam won't coddle her, that she has to, go to blind school, and she's got to figure out how to do everything, and nobody will help her. Like, she has to do everything herself. And it's like, oh, that makes me so mad. And then at the end of the movie, she realizes that, blindness is in some ways her superpower. She is self-sufficient. Like, she saved herself, basically.
Yeah. With the fridge.
With the help of an appliance, like in my book. In my book, the appliance is the dishwasher. The dishwasher steps in to help at a key moment.
Is it okay to tell people that? Should we cut this?
No, I think we can. That's all I'll say, though.
Oh, so now I want to know what the dishwasher does.
Of course. See, you're going to run out and buy the book.
Damn right. My thanks to Lynn Coady, whose new novel, Watching You Without Me, arrives in stores and on ebook platforms today. I can't wait to read it. I really want to know what the dishwasher does. You can find Lynn on Twitter at Lynn_Coady, and you can find Wait Until Dark on DVD from Warner Home Video and in a more recent Blu-ray restoration from Warner Archive. It's also available on iTunes and Google Play. As always, you can find me on Twitter at Norm Wilner and elsewhere on the internet at nowtoronto.com. You can also find this podcast on Twitter at Semcast, S-E-M-Cast, and on the web at someoneelsesmovie.com. If you feel like leaving a review on Apple Podcasts or Google Podcasts or wherever you enjoy the show, that would be greatly appreciated. Every little bit helps. It truly does. And check out the other shows on the Frequency Podcast Network. They're pretty good. Thanks for your support, and thanks for listening. See you next week.
I'm afraid you're just too darn loud.